In 1912, Jim Thorpe, a hard-working and determined Native American man, entered the Stockholm, Sweden Olympics, representing the United States of America. He competed in both the decathlon and pentathlon, winning gold in both events. Due to his Native American culture and status, his medals were then taken from him, which highly violated his rights as an American citizen. Attention needs to be brought to the fact that in sports past and present, racist actions have and continue to happen. It is the responsibility of each individual and the government as a whole body to fairly include and award all competitors who are citizens of the United States, no matter their culture or race. Jim Thorpe was part of the Sac and Fox Nation. The Sac and Fox culture focuses on a deep respect for their own lives, their families, their communities, and all of creation. Watho Huck was Jim's Indian name, meaning bright path, which he indeed lived up to. He led by example as he served his people in every way possible. Thorpe was not only a great athlete, but he was also a great person. He was the caregiver for his nation. He provided support for tribal members in need. One night, Jim got a call at around 2 a.m. about a mother and her children who were at the doorstep of a friend of his. He didn't think twice about it and ran straight to their aid. 50-year-old Thorpe ran up the 100 stairs it took to get to the front door, only to see the woman and her 2 children starving and weak. The only clothing they had on were a couple of old torn flour sacks. Jim knelt down beside them and reassuringly said, "Don't worry, we will get you some food and medicine right away." He then proceeded to carry each one of them down the stairs to his car and rush them to a nearby hospital. Thorpe found a place for them to stay the night and then went to collect enough money for a hotel room for them to rest in for the next couple of days. This situation shows the great lengths Jim Thorpe went to in order to take care of his people. During the summer of 1912, Jim Thorpe was preparing himself for the events of his lifetime, the opportunity to compete at the Olympics. He trained endlessly to prepare for this prime competition. Jim wasn't nervous, though. He had done everything in his power to be confident and ready for this moment. Thorpe confidently stated, "I had trained well and hard and had confidence in my ability." Jim Thorpe had trained for it all. He had done hurdles, shot put, pole vaulting, javelin, discus, hammer, and more. He was doing what he loved with no regrets or shame from others who had thought he didn't deserve to be on that field competing. Jim was determined to prove them wrong. He also wanted to be a shining example to his people that they could achieve anything if they set their mind to it. Unfortunately, it seems that in life, no matter how hard someone trains or prepares, there will still be roadblocks along the way. Jim Thorpe came across many, but he never let it stop him. While he was preparing for the competition, he realized someone had stolen his only pair of track shoes. He didn't have money or time to go get another pair, so he quickly thought to take a look in the trash cans. He didn't find his, but he came out with a mismatched pair of track shoes. He even had to wear extra socks on one foot just so they would somewhat fit. That day, Jim ended up winning gold in his events with that old pair of mismatched trash can shoes. What an exciting day July 7th was for Jim. Winning gold in the pentathlon consisted of the javelin, long jump, high jump, 200-meter race, and 1500-meter race. Was quite the accomplishment. A short 8 days later, he went on to give it his all at the decathlon, which included the 100-meter race, long jump, shot put, high jump, 400-meter race, discus, 110-meter hurdles, pole vault, javelin, and the 1500-meter race. Thorpe had beaten his toughest opponent, Sweden's Hugo Wiserland, with an impressive 700 points, now putting him to win gold for both the pentathlon and decathlon. He even set a new world record of 8,142 points, which would stand until 1948. He had really done it all. His dedication finally paid off. Yes, he wanted to win, but he also wanted to be recognized as a Native American champion athlete. He wanted to use his fame to boost the Native American culture. For Jim Thorpe, it was never really about bringing himself to the spotlight, but more about bringing Native American representation to the public. The one really important thing that he wanted was to be treated fairly by the IOC, also known as the International Olympic Committee. Sadly, Thorpe's well-deserved medals eventually ended up being awarded to the runners-up instead. Many did not want to see a Native American earn such a prestigious medal. As unfair as it was, an amateur athletic union opened up an investigation to find anything they could as to a reason why Jim Thorpe didn't deserve these medals. Unfortunately, it worked, and their cause was that Jim Thorpe had played in a semi-pro league of baseball all the way back in 1909 to 1910. This was supposedly against the rules because in the Olympics there's a rule that states that athletes have to have an amateur status. Since Thorpe had played in that league and accepted small payments for each game, plus had signed his name for it, they took his medals away. Thorpe tried to argue that he wasn't the only one in the Olympic community to have played in this minor league. What those other men had not told Thorpe is that they used an alias name to keep their amateur status. The thing is, though, is that this had happened 2 years before he had competed in the Olympics. So it's not like he had been still being paid for it. But the IOC found it enough to take his medals in January of 1913. Those medals were his best trophy and prized possession he owned, so for them to be taken must have been crushing. This was one of Thorpe's biggest roadblocks. Most would have quit sports altogether and sulked in depression. Not Thorpe, though. He continued to excel in many sports. He had fallen in love with multiple sports such as football, baseball, lacrosse, and even ballroom dancing. Jim played professional football from 1915 to 1925. He played in the MLB from 1913 to 1919 for the New York Giants. Jim Thorpe really made big impacts on these sports too, an all-around standout athlete and person. Not only had Jim fallen in love with sports, but he had also fallen in love with his high school sweetheart, Iva Miller. In 1913, 1 year after his Olympic career ended, he got married to the love of his life. Iva Miller and Jim Thorpe ended up having 4 children together, 3 girls and 1 boy. Their marriage had thrived until their only son died in 1917 from polio. This was heartbreaking for the both of them, and as anyone could imagine, beyond challenging. In 1925, Iva filed for divorce, claiming desertion. Jim Thorpe then went on to pursue a career in acting in 1931, where he acted in around 70 films. One of his most well-known films was called Jim Thorpe All-American. It was a film about his life and the hardships he had to overcome to make the world a better place. During that time, he also decided to play baseball for a few more years. He played for the Orang Indians in LaRue, Ohio, an all-Native American team. It was there he met his second wife, Frida Veronica Kirkpatrick, who was the manager for their team. Frida and Jim had 4 boys together. They were happily married for 15 years until 1941, when Frida decided to file for divorce due to difficulties Jim faced after his athletic career ended. Some of these difficulties included financial struggles, a growing drinking habit, and a lack of companionship. 4 years later, Jim Thorpe met Patricia Anskew. They ended up getting married in 1945 and had a pretty stable relationship, except for Jim's worsening alcohol addiction, leaving them in poverty. 8 years later, on March 28, 1953, 64-year-old Jim Thorpe passed away. Patricia was in charge of all of Jim's funeral arrangements. One big decision was discussed amongst all of Jim's family, and they had voted to take the remains to Oklahoma where he was born. But Patricia was selfish and ended up selling Thorpe's body to 2 emerging Pennsylvania towns in exchange for a memorial and the towns being named after him. Though Jim's body wasn't in the place he had always wanted it in, his legacy was still remembered, and that's what counts. At this time, Jim Thorpe still hadn't gotten what he deserved. Some passionate supporters and loved ones had seen how he had been mistreated time and time again, so they didn't stop fighting for him. The Bright Path Strong organization, inspired by Thorpe's indigenous name, Wathohuk, meaning Bright Path, played a key role in Thorpe's gold medals being reinstated. The organization started a petition in 2020 to advocate for this. After many protests and petitions made by so many who looked up to Thorpe, it was decided that not only was it unfair his medals were taken away, it was illegal. A number of American sports officials were working for the deceased Thorpe, and with evidence, the IOC eventually caved. Even though people advocated for this change back in 1982, it wasn't until July 15, 2022, that Jim Thorpe was officially named the sole winner of the 1912 Olympic pentathlon and decathlon. To make it even more special, this was the 110th anniversary of the 1912 Olympic medal ceremony. It took America 110 years to make a very big wrong right. Surely, Jim was proud to know his heritage had been acknowledged and honored. What gratitude and recognition we should all have for those who fought for the truly talented and inspiring man. It is my hope that each of us will confidently stand up for what is right and fair in all situations, big and small, whether we are working towards our own goals to become great or to be a support to others. Let's vow to do it with heart and passion, just as Jim did.